Alright, so with Evil Dead Rise coming out a couple weeks ago, I thought it would be a good time to rank all of the movies, so let's get started. Yes, the first Evil Dead movie is the last one, and it's simply because although it's groundbreaking for the time, and it obviously changed horror movies for the best, one, the movie is very outdated, it hasn't aged the best, the makeup looks a bit weird, also the acting is not exactly the best. Even the leading star of this movie, Bruce Campbell, said that his acting in this movie was not good, and in fact he didn't even know how to act. But I guess for those reasons that I don't like the first Evil Dead movie, a lot of people actually like this movie. And once again, I like this movie, but compared to the other four movies, I just don't think this one's as good. I know I'm in the minority when it comes to my opinion on Evil Dead Rise because a lot of people have loved the new Evil Dead movie, and I don't blame them. I think it's a fun movie, I think it's decent, but that's just my opinion. I think that it has some pretty good horror in it. I thought that the movie was a bit too much leaning towards one side compared to the other, and although I feel like it was really good with horror, when they did have comedy, it kind of felt out of place, while in the 2013 version, knew exactly what it wanted to be and just committed to the vision that it was going for. And my biggest issue with Evil Dead Rise is simply that it never really knew what it wanted to be, and when it tried to do something else, it kind of just didn't work for me. Also, the characters in this movie aren't exactly the most memorable, although Alyssa Sutherland, who was playing the mother in this movie, she was absolutely great and she was probably the best part of this movie, but everyone else was fine. Listen, this movie is just simply fun. You're not expecting Oscar-level screenplay or dialogue in a movie like Army of Darkness, but what you are expecting is a good time. And this is probably the Evil Dead movie that has the least amount of horror in it, and honestly, I don't have a problem with it. This movie is full of iconic one-liners from Bruce Campbell, and he really carries this movie on his back, because if he wasn't in this thing, I don't know if it would be as watchable as it is. And honestly, depending on who you ask, my ranking of Evil Dead being at number 3 might be too high for some people, and for other people it might be too low. Obviously, this is the remake for the first Evil Dead movie that ever came out, and I think that this one just does everything that the first Evil Dead did, but just better. I think that the acting is better. I think that the camera work is about even as you could get, but that's about it. The makeup is a lot better. It's a lot more scarier, and it's probably one of the most brutal horror movies that I've ever seen in my life. If you're looking for a horror movie that will make you immediately question after watching it why you watched it, I think this is the one for you. And while I was watching Evil Dead Rise, I decided, you know what, when I come home, I'm going to watch the 2013 version. And while I was watching it, I was saying to myself that this is exactly what I wanted Evil Dead Rise to be. And not only do I think that this is the best horror movie of the franchise, I think this is one of the best horror movies of all time. Yeah, I know my number one option is not exactly the most controversial, but like, come on, it's Evil Dead 2. It's one of the best sequels of all time. It's one of the best horror comedies of all time. I've never seen a movie weave between genres so effortlessly where you're dying laughing in one scene and then being absolutely terrified the next. As you just heard, the score from Evil Dead 2 is pretty good as well. The pacing for this movie is absolutely perfect as well because Sam Raimi, as we all know, if you watch Sam Raimi movies, his pacing is through the roof, and most of the time it's a bit too fast, but I thought in this movie he was able to master his pacing very well. And Bruce Campbell is absolutely great in this movie. You can absolutely tell that he's a much better actor than he was in the first one, and it is a crazy difference. And overall, guys, that is my Evil Dead movies ranking. What is your ranking? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with my list? What is your list? Let me know in the comments. And those are my thoughts on that.